Most people read for comfort. They seek affirmation, not disruption. They want stories that lull them into passive agreement, not awakenings that demand self-reckoning. This is why they remain stagnant. Year after year, the same thoughts, the same frustrations, the same mediocrity. But there is another way. There is a kind of reading that resembles warfare, a kind of book that does not just sit on your shelf. It sharpens your mind like a blade. These are the books you do not read casually. You study them, you extract from them, you apply them, because books are not just objects. They are weapons, and you must choose them as a general chooses his arms. The battlefield is not out there. It is within you. Every hesitation, every self-doubt, every illusion you hold about the world is an open flank. The wrong book will indulge your weakness. The right one will expose it, tear it open, and force you to confront the raw reality beneath. When a general chooses a weapon, he considers terrain, enemy, timing. You must do the same. Ask yourself, where are you weak? What do you fear? What patterns do you repeat that keep you confined? Then find the book that strikes at that exact point. This is not about reading widely. It is about reading precisely, targeted, tactical, ruthless. There are books that have been written with blood, not ink. Books forged from suffering, obsession, exile. These are not light reading. They carry the weight of generations. They challenge your assumptions, your morals, your sense of identity. When you read them, you are not entertained, you are initiated. These are the books of the strategist, the philosopher, the survivor. The ones who understood that knowledge is power only when it is dangerous. You must learn to read with a kind of detachment. Do not worship the author. Do not accept everything. Instead, interrogate every sentence. Ask, what is the hidden motive behind this idea? What is the strategy buried in this paragraph? What does this teach me about human nature, about myself, about control? Read as if you were dissecting a living organism. Tear the flesh from the bone and take only what strengthens you. Most people will scoff at this. They will call it cold, joyless, paranoid. Let them. These are the same people who sleepwalk through life, manipulated by slogans, addicted to distraction, defenseless against the mind games of more strategic minds. Let them read for pleasure. You read for power. While they are chasing dopamine, you are constructing a fortress. Do not read 100 books once. Read a few books 100 times. Return to them as you evolve. You will find that what once seemed obscure now glows with clarity. What once angered you now reveals your blind spots. What once inspired you now challenges you to go further. The right book is alive. It grows with you, turns against you, humbles you. That is how you know it is worth keeping. When you choose a book, do so with the gravity of a soldier picking a blade before battle. Will this teach me how to think, how to act, how to see what others do not? Will this make me less vulnerable, more decisive, more dangerous? If the answer is no, discard it. Time is your most limited resource, and every moment spent reading the wrong thing is a moment wasted in preparation for the war that is already at your gates. Do not be fooled by elegant prose or academic credentials. Many books are written by the safe for the safe. They pacify, flatter, dilute. Look instead for the books that unsettle you, that whisper truths you are not ready to hear, that pierce your comfort and drag your ego into the light. These are the books that change people. These are the books that turn the passive into the powerful. There are moments in life when everything hangs in the balance, when the weight of your choices, your fears, your patterns, all converge into a single thread, tight and trembling. These moments are often quiet. You don't recognize them as crossroads. There is no thunder, no spotlight, just a quiet unease, a question you can't shake, a whisper that something must change. It is in these moments that the right book, opened at the right time, becomes more than a collection of words. It becomes a turning point, a blade slipped into the mind, a mirror you cannot turn away from. Most people are unaware of how fragile their direction is. They believe they are making decisions from a place of clarity, but in truth, they are being pulled by habits, past wounds, unseen influences. They move in circles, calling it progress. They repeat the same mistakes and rename them growth, and all the while, the knowledge that could unchain them sits silently on a shelf, unopened. The tragedy is not ignorance, it is misaligned timing. Because knowledge does not change you unless it arrives when you are ready to receive it, when the pain is ripe enough, when the illusion has cracked just enough to let something new in. There is a danger in reading too early. Some truths must be earned. A book that reveals the machinery of human nature, the architecture of power, the games people play it, will mean nothing to the naive. They will see manipulation where there is strategy. They will call wisdom cynicism. They are not ready, and so the knowledge passes over them like wind over glass. But when that same book is read after betrayal, after failure, after a pattern has repeated itself for the third or fourth time, suddenly it speaks. Not with words, but with recognition. You see yourself in its pages. You see your mistakes, your blind spots, your enemy, and then something happens that cannot be undone. The old self begins to die. One book, at the right moment, can erase years of confusion, not because it gives you answers, but because it sharpens your questions. It cuts through noise. It reveals what you've been avoiding. And with that clarity comes direction, and with direction comes power. You begin to move differently, speak differently, make choices that confuse others, because you are no longer operating from the same framework. You are not reacting anymore. You are designing. That is what a turning point looks like. It's not loud, it's strategic. You cannot always predict when this moment will come, but you can prepare for it. You collect these books like tools, like dormant weapons. You read widely but selectively, storing the ideas in the back of your mind, knowing that one day they will be activated. And when that moment comes, when life presses you into discomfort, into confrontation with yourself, you return to the right page and everything changes. The book hasn't changed, you have, and so it finally reveals itself. The world celebrates visible achievements, money, fame, influence, but what goes unnoticed are the silent revolutions of the mind, the private turning points that never make headlines. A woman reads a single passage and decides never to return to a toxic relationship. A man reads a forgotten essay and realizes he has lived someone else's idea of success. A young person stumbles on a concept that redefines their entire understanding of control, of freedom. These are the real transformations. They do not happen in public. They happen in the mind, often triggered by words written decades or centuries ago. But their impact ripples for a lifetime. You are not waiting for a miracle. You are waiting for a confrontation with an idea that exposes you. That shatters the false narratives you've protected. That gives you a vocabulary for your pain and a blueprint for your escape. And when it comes, if you are attentive, if you are ready, it won't feel like learning. It will feel like remembering who you were supposed to become all along. You are not born prepared. You enter the world exposed, naked not just in body but in mind. Every idea you hold, every belief you inherit, every rule you follow is given to you by others, many of whom have no interest in your strength. They teach you obedience disguised as morality. They feed you distractions and call it education. They promise safety and deliver dependence. And unless you learn to read with purpose, to read not for escape but for arming the mind, you will be led, quietly, gently, into a life of subtle imprisonment. To read is not merely to learn, it is to resist, to arm yourself against manipulation, ignorance, and the slow rot of decay. Manipulation is not always violent or obvious. Often it is elegant, invisible. A word, a tone, a suggestion planted in your mind by someone who understands you better than you understand yourself. They know your fears. They know your need to belong, to be seen, to be right, and they use it. They shape your decisions without ever giving you a direct order. The manipulated rarely know they are being controlled. That is the genius of it, but there is a way out. A book written by someone who has seen the game from the inside, who lays bare the tactics and principles behind persuasion, who shows you the code behind the behavior. This kind of book does more than inform. It immunizes, it inoculates you against deception. You begin to see the puppet strings, and once you see them, they lose their power. Ignorance is not the absence of knowledge. It is a state of obedience. When you do not know how things work, you are forced to rely on those who claim they do. You become easy to govern, easy to frighten, easy to exploit. You follow headlines, trends, ideologies without scrutiny. You become a reflection of the loudest voice in the room. But when you read, not superficially, not passively, but deeply, you begin to think in systems. You begin to question why, to trace effects to their causes, to understand motives beneath the surface. A book can teach you history, yes, but more importantly, it can teach you patterns. And once you recognize a pattern, you gain foresight. You are no longer a pawn. You become a strategist. Decay is the most silent enemy of all. You do not feel it. You only realize it after years of numbing routines, shallow conversations, and mental stagnation. You wake up one day and wonder where your edge went. When exactly did you stop evolving? This is the decay of the mind, the erosion of clarity, curiosity, sharpness. The only antidote is to feed the mind something sharp, something that cuts through the haze and demands engagement. A good book is not a comfort. It is a challenge. It makes you uncomfortable. It holds a mirror to your assumptions. It demands attention, contemplation, a wrestling match with ideas you cannot dismiss. This is how you stay awake, by reading as if your survival depends on it. Because it does. Most people will not understand this. They will tell you reading is a hobby, something to do on weekends or vacations. They will recommend novels that entertain but do not provoke, articles that confirm what they already believe. Let them. That path leads to comfort, not strength. But if you read as a form of armor, if you treat each book as a tool for decoding reality, for refining your instincts, for fortifying your mental independence, you will begin to operate on a different level. You will recognize when you are being lied to. You will sense when your mind is slipping into laziness. You will hold yourself to a standard that no one else enforces, and in that discipline, you will find freedom reading. Then, becomes not just a habit but a weapon. A quiet rebellion, a refusal to be softened by noise, dulled by conformity, or dismantled by forces you cannot see. Every page you absorb becomes a layer of armor, every concept a sharpened blade. In a world designed to keep you weak, to distract you, to confuse and placate you, reading becomes the most dangerous act of all. So when they ask you why you read, why you spend hours with pages that demand your full attention, with words that unsettle instead of soothe, tell them the truth. You do it because the world is not kind to the unprepared, because silence is often a mask for control, and confusion is the preferred weapon of the powerful, because you refuse to walk blind through a landscape of traps. You read to sharpen your perception, to steel your instincts, to remember that every weakness left unchecked becomes an opening for someone else's agenda. You read not to impress, not to escape, but to survive, and more than that, to dominate. In a world where most give away their minds for free, you choose to fortify yours. That is not entertainment. That is strategy. That is war.